Well, everybody, welcome to the March Challenge. And we're doing a little bit of a different structure where we are going to kind of keep things to the solid foundations and basics of kind of rotating through hydration, diet, movement, stress, sleep, those EPIC five. Those are the five pillars we talk about at EPIC all the time. But within those, kind of picking a more specific topic or thing we can look at and focus on in terms of that challenge. So just kind of something different we're doing, keeping it a little bit shorter, just because I know sometimes I might not have time to listen to somebody talk for an hour, and I'm sure that's true for you guys too. So keep
Very
it more
true.
focused to a half hour, kind of different structure. So for those of you guys joining us Zoom, glad to have you here, and love to have, for those of you guys on Zoom or watching through Facebook Live, just love to get your comments, feedback, an input just to the discussion as you'd like. And if you got something very interesting, we'd love to have you expound upon. We might call on you if you're comfortable with that. And if you're not, you just let us know. So you don't have to be forced to do anything either way. So today, what we want to talk about is, what could be one thing to help up our nutrition and to not feel overwhelmed, or one thing we can do to feel a little bit less of that overwhelm. So
Right.
that's kind of what we want to focus on today. And so we're just going to, Natalie and I, we're just going to chat through a few different areas that we found can be common themes that can be
Mhm.
helpful for folks. And I would love to hear just from you guys, in the comments, of what is one thing that for you has helped to up your nutrition and or lower that sense of overwhelm as well. So with that said, Natalie, I'm going to give you the floor because this first point I was
Yeah.
taking notes, you totally remembered, and I thought it was a really great point.
Yeah, it was really relevant. I've talked to a couple people about it in the past few weeks, and kind of like Dan mentioned, within dietary, changes, there are so many different, pieces to consider or different things that you could do, as your first step. And yesterday we talked about hydration and building that foundation. And again, with diet, there's just a lot to consider. And so in order to reduce that overwhelm, instead of, planning on doing a full 180, so going from that, standard American diet or wherever you're at, completely over to Epic 5. For some people, the Epic 5 might be pretty close to what they're already eating, and so it's not that big of a transition. But no, again, for some people, it's just a big jump, and there's a lot of changes, and it can be hard to see, or it can be hard to know where to start. So, getting to my point here, the first thing, or one of the biggest things that we could do is the concept of crowding out. So basically, instead of focusing on getting rid of everything and only buying all Epic 5 approved foods, again, it can be a really big switch. So instead, we're going to not necessarily take everything out. We're just going to start adding some more good things in. So regardless of where you're at with, everything else, we're just going to focus on veggies, for example. So if you're starting at 1 to 3 cups of veggies in an average day, then we can maybe work on increasing that by a few cups. So let's shoot for 3 to 5 cups of vegetables or servings of vegetables within a day. And naturally, as we, slowly increase that vegetable intake, it's going to, again, just naturally crowd out some of that other stuff. And again, it can, if if we're taking this approach, it could yeah, it's a bit of a longer kind of process. But again, if it's going to help you to reduce that overwhelm, help you be more motivated to continue to make changes, even if we are doing those, smaller steps, it can still make a big difference, in the long term too. Yeah, so that's kind of the basics of crowding out. Again, just increasing the good stuff, not necessarily intentionally taking out the bad stuff, but increasing the good or better stuff so we can naturally yeah, just kind of tip that scale a little bit.
Yeah, it's really great because, like as you simply put it, just add more of the good stuff in. Just focus on that. I think it makes, like you said, it's one less thing to focus on
Yeah.
instead of the combination of do more of this and try to cut out more of this, and that's two things at the same time, you
Right.
know. And This can be a really helpful mindset for any of you guys who can identify with just struggling or finding it a stressor, trigger or stressor to hear or think through the idea of like any, a sense of restriction in diet, or if or that temporarily cutting things out means there's a deprivation of food because you're not as practiced with how to get the good stuff in to replace it, so there's kind of that lull of time whereas you're trying to figure out, these other foods to put in your diet. You're just eating less food overall, and so that's just really a tough spot to be in, maybe not, and then it doesn't really help for a healthy, headspace either. So yeah, I think that's really pertinent for those folks. Ties even really well too. I know we're kind of talking more about foods today, but I mean, that's a very, I think we all understand this concept very clearly with hydration.
I was literally just thinking that. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you mentioned it. It was on my mind. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
No, you're good. You gave a really great overview. And so I know when I do, it's like, there's always like one or two things. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. But no, the hydration, it's a big one. Like, it's often not a coincidence that if I were to be drinking 2/3 of my liquids was not water and it would, or tea, but like just, pop, excessive coffee or energy drinks, what have you, then it makes sense that I wouldn't feel thirst, like there's only so much room in my body and in my stomach, for the liquids. So it makes sense that I'm not feeling as thirsty for that water because there's so much of this other stuff in. So I'm like, all right, you tell yourself I can have that stuff as long as I'm still, doing 10 more ounces today. You're just going to find that it's eventually the worst case. The worst case is you still are doing everything you did before, plus that 10 ounces of water or plus that bit of food. And hey, your nutrition goes up a bit. Best case scenario, for one, you focus on one thing, but still get that 2-for-1 effect. Yeah.
And I think one part that you said too, just along the lines of, it does take a while. There's kind of a learning curve with this, diet, these dietary recommendations, if you will. And it does take some time to, get familiar with those and work to figure out what are your favorite, vegetables? How do you like to prepare them? Just practicing those pieces again without having to feel like, I like the term deprivated, like you said, Dan, and as opposed to that, we'd rather feel abundance and feel like we do have a lot of options. And like you said, if we're just going to go straight from our old habits and do a, hard right into the Epic 5, it's likely not going to be sustainable if you're not already comfortable and have somewhat of a plan or ideas of, how to throw things together. Yeah.
Definitely. So that's kind of the first checkpoint question is, what about for you guys? Like for those of you watching this later on too, like what is, could maybe focusing on crowding out be helpful next step for you? And if so, what would be that thing that you would add in more of? So it's just something to think about. I think usually a great, a logical starting place is how can I just add in, do everything I'm doing already, but just add in an extra 1 to 2 cups of, XYZ vegetables. Yeah. They're filling, they're usually not as calorically dense. So if you're worried about eating more food equaling weight gain, usually, especially if it's leafy greens or cruciferous, you just don't need to worry about that. You just don't at all. And again, you're packing in more nutrients too, getting more bang for your buck. So that's the main thing to think about there. All right. So the next one, Natalie, we were talking about is actually, before I get to there, I just want to share a comment. So I crowded out from Alyssa, I crowded out my constant candy eating with constant pistachio eating. That's awesome. Healthier, yes. Right step, yes. Then I asked Dan about, I vaguely remember this. I asked Dan about how many pistachios I should eat in a day and adjusted to that. More candy and healthy amount of pistachios. So yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, Alyssa. I do remember now, we were talking about pistachios. And that was I think this is a great example where it was what you're saying, it was a multi-step process. First was, let's just switch to something that's got, healthy fats in it, right? And reduce sugars, other additives and things like that. So a lot of great things going on. And then down the road, it's like, we could still maybe have too much of certain healthy foods too, right? It's depending on your goals. Like if you're looking to trim down a little bit on some weight and then you're eating tons of pistachios, they're healthy. They're just very dense in calories too, right? That's just normal and that's fine. And then just tweaking that. So no, that's a great example. Thank you, Melissa.
And I think that fits well into our next point too. On one side, it is crowding out, but on the other side, finding an alternative that still works for you. And Dan, I know you were ready to share that, so I'll let you build on that
point. Well, thanks. So that's a good point. Yeah. So the second main theme of what could be one thing to help up our nutrition, improve our diet is, again, just identifying, just looking at my notes here, how we worded it, identify what current habits or desires you have that could be fulfilled with a better alternative to fit that niche. So I'll give an example for me. It is an ingrained habit ever since childhood to want some kind of what my brain considers dessert after I eat lunch and after I eat dinner. And it's just the second stomach effect. It is very rare for me to, after legitimately being full, satiated, it's very rare to also still be like, yeah, I'm full enough, not like overstuffed, like, oh, get kind of full, but just full enough where I'm like, yeah, I'll just skip dessert too. Usually that second stomach turns on for me and it's like, okay, and we're having that piece of chocolate, right? Or that cookie or whatever. And I'm like, so done. And so, this is where it's like, if you can't fight them, join them, I think is how one author put it. So instead of fighting and saying, I'm not going to have dessert and that's what I should focus on, it's instead, I will still have dessert. So what's a better choice I can make? So again, it goes back to kind of crowding out that sense of not feeling a deprivation, but having options, which creates a sense of abundance. So, and they're usually, certainly alternatives. The main thing we have to remember, this is just kind of a quick side point. If we approach an alternative to some food or that we really like, or that fits a certain need for us, maybe it's a quick and convenient snack to grab. Maybe it's a dessert. Maybe it's something that's like pasta, or is grain-like in texture. Whatever that thing is, figure out what that thing is where you're like, when I have a sense of that, this helps me a lot. And then when you find that alternative, just remember to not create a false expectation or creating an expectation of this alternative will taste and be just exactly the same, right? It's never going to be the same. So if you assume that, you're going to be disappointed every time. You need to be open to, is this a good enough alternative for me? And then getting used to it. But Natalie, I'm going to pause. You were going to say something.
Yeah, so along with that, just kind of a practical idea that we share in our detoxification food plan workshop. Well, that's always a mouthful. But basically, it's on the topic of looking for alternatives. So if you're looking for like a healthier version of something that you do really enjoy, one thing to consider is like what kinds of spices are in the normal version that you are used to, and using those spices to kind of leverage the taste of that. But just kind of, again, sharing a piece of advice, I guess, when looking for recipes online, I wish that Epic was popular enough where you could type Epic 5, whatever recipe, but we're not quite there yet. But there are a few meal plans that are very similar to Epic with, some notable differences. But Whole30, WHOLE 30, and AIP, again, aren't exactly the same as Epic, but they're very, very close to Epic 5. And if you are looking for, again, just a healthier alternative, I would recommend using those one or the other key terms there just to help you filter your search. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of other stuff. So yeah, either using AIP or Whole30. Dan and I do that it probably multiple times a week for just looking at different things. And so yeah, just wanted to throw out that little practical piece too as you're looking for more options.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially helpful for meals, but even like you said, snack ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we're getting down to the wire with really small specific details, I mean, you can always, you know, check on the internet, like alternative to, and then type in that ingredient or that thing and see what turns up. And then, you know, and from there, I mean, depending on how practiced you are and kind of looking through this stuff, maybe it seems obvious, like, oh yeah, that would be a healthier alternative. Maybe it takes a second opinion. And so definitely, you know, utilize, for those of you guys who are not our private clients here, I mean, utilize this group, get input, get just some other people. It's helpful to hear like, hey, I think that this is a good alternative. What do you guys think? Just encourage you guys to take advantage of that. In case you hear an opposing opinion, then it can help whether that opposing opinion is correct or not, it at least gives you a moment's pause and take another look at it, and then move on from there. And then certainly if you guys are private clients too, in addition to this group, I mean, just reach out to your private portal. But yeah, I love it. So kind of recapping, so that second point today is, what is a certain kind of niche or important need that certain aspects of your eating in the day provides you, where like if you don't have that thing, it's going to be really disruptive. Identify what that thing or things are and see what could be a better alternative and try that out. Perfect. So I think that leads us to our third and main point is the smoothies next. So I'll bounce it back to you, Natalie. Kick us off.
Awesome. So our smoothies, these are a very you know, important part or piece of our detoxification plan. Really, the biggest goal that they serve is an easy way for you to get multiple servings of vegetables, also some, you know, berries, fruits in there, but we're also getting a healthy acid, whether that's lemon juice, lime juice, apple cider vinegar. Again, we're going to have multiple servings of vegetables, whether you're using leafy greens or cruciferous, getting a nice little blend in there. But yeah, we have kind of the structure of our smoothie is really basic. Again, leafy greens, some cruciferous vegetables. We've got berries, about a half cup ish for kind of a sweet there. Again, our healthy acids, water to texture. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Is there? I think that's all of it.
I was looking at our notes, so I was quite. I think you did though. Leafy greens,
I think I got all of it.
Acids, berries, water.
Yes.
Parsley,
perfect.
cilantro.
Yeah. I put, parsley cilantro. That's my favorite part. That's what I forgot. I knew I was missing something. So parsley and cilantro are what we call, or what are called chelators. And chelate, fun fact, comes from a Greek word meaning claw. So chelators, their main purpose is to go into the body. They latch onto heavy metal toxins and help excrete them through our urine. So that's going to help, you know, if there's any buildup of toxins there, that's going to help bring them down, but also prevent further buildup of toxins. So that's why cilantro and parsley, again, are super duper important. And that's, yeah, I've got a couple questions this week. Like, I've seen that a lot of places in the smoothies. Like, why, I don't know, why is that there? And yeah, that's why. Because, yeah, they're going to help us limit or, you know, get rid of those heavy metal toxins that we don't want inside. So
absolutely.
Woo!
Yeah, that's a great overview. So, you know, this is interesting, like even for Natalie and I, so we have been, as Epic team, we're going through like our own like program as well, just for personal, just for us personally, and also just to kind of help go back through for our private clients and the curriculum, like any things that we can update, brush up on. And for Natalie and I, as we've been coaching each other, we both identified, I can let you speak for yourself now, any details you want to share, but I know for me, I identified that a big thing that, you know, after I was being extra intentional, kind of did like a 21-day detox, just kind of recentering even from the holidays. But knowing myself, I don't stick to that level of intentionality. At the end of that, there's always a dip, but I learn a couple of things from it that I keep with me that ups my game. But I think the main thing for me that keeps the cups of vegetables a day, the servings of vegetables, nutrient dense diet, really is the smoothies. Because I learned that when I was more consistent with having even like not just one, but two or more of those smoothies a day, and I'd have them with my meals. And in addition to what Natalie just shared, like I always add extra ingredients. I'll put in hemp seeds, some flax, I'll put in coconut, I'll put cocoa powder, up my berries. So there's plenty of other stuff in there. And then I have it with my meal, which is everything else. So it's a really filling meal. I was like, wow, this is great. And yeah, it definitely helped me to be a step or a notch or two higher with my diet. So I think there's just a psychological component too. Like when I look at a smoothie, like you take all that stuff and then you blend it down. I mean, it's going to be at its most compressed state. Just like a liquid cannot be compressed. Like that's as solid as you're going to get. It shrinks down to maybe, well, you guys don't know how wide my smoothie is, but either way, it like shrinks down to half. And my brain, my vision thinks this is not that much. I can eat that and maybe some other stuff. But if we took all the vegetables and components and put on a plate, we'd think, oh, that's like more than what I need. Like that's a lot of food. And so we naturally tend to do less, put less on our plate than we might in a smoothie. So there's just it's just weird, the psychology there. Yeah.
And it reminds me too of why we really encourage hyperhydration in the morning, because getting, a head start on that in the morning is gonna, save you some, catch up from having to do that in the afternoon. But same thing with these smoothies. I know most people have them in the morning, like either as breakfast or with breakfast. But, even like you said, it just gives you, in one meal, you're already getting 2 to 4 plus servings of vegetables in one easy sitting. And also I do want to clarify with, the ingredients initially that we chatted about, again, leafy greens, cruciferous, cilantro, parsley, our acid, lemon, lime juice, apple cider vinegar, and water. I personally use like coconut or almond milk, coconut milk. But I do want to clarify, those alone are kind of like our nuts and bolts recipe, which is not technically a meal of itself. But if we were to, like Dan does, have that with something else. So intentionally include, a healthy fat and protein along with that. Or of course there's, like collagen protein powder. We recommend like a pure pea protein powder as well. Adding, healthy fat and protein can make that smoothie into a meal. But just wanted to clarify that as well. Yeah.
And that's what, thanks for clarifying that. Cause like with mine, I, actually, even just for, to be real, for budget purposes, I decided to not regularly get like a, good quality protein powder. But instead, lean into, lean into other whole foods for that. So my smoothies tend to be, berries, veggies, and fats, but there's no like protein powder in there. So that's why I always am still making sure that that is paired with something. So, if you're not vegetarian or vegan, maybe it's just a few like, leftover slices of turkey or something. But if it's with a meal, then that's what, I'll pair it with. So I have this really filling smoothie that's got, fats and stuff in it along with my meal as well. So so that's kind of the main 3 things there. I was just thinking if there's anything else you wanted to chat. Oh, I was just gonna say with the smoothies, if you guys are like me, where it's like making a smoothie that is green stuff, more green stuff, acids, a little bit of berries, water, and then herbs, doesn't sound, for some folks, they're like, I don't know, they try it, it's not that bad. For many folks, they try it and they're like, yeah, it's medicinal. It tastes medicinal.
It's gonna take some trial and error.
One person put it tastes very green. I'm like that too. So that's
a nice way to say it.
Yeah, that's a very nice way to say it. So feel free to add in extra stuff for flavor, because the cool thing is a lot of things we can add for flavor are also just more nutrients. Just like when we add in seasoning, we season our food. We're just adding more nutrients and flavor to our food. So it's a win-win. So definitely don't limit yourself to, if you try just the base recipe, I mean, for you, it might not taste that great, but we can add things to it to make it taste great. I mean, that's what we do with food all the time, right? You know, even when we have our favorite piece of meat or something, like we season it, you know, why we like eating at restaurants. They do stuff to the food to flavor it. So maybe, you know, maybe not always the same stuff that we'd recommend using, but still, either way.
Yeah. And just some ideas there too. I know, Dan, you personally like unsweetened coconut flakes, and I know some people like to add, you know, vanilla protein powder and even like a little bit of cinnamon in there.
Yeah.
And I'm opening up our green smoothie guide, which is going to be, again, after you answer the question of the day, this will be included in the guide for today. And I was just looking at it, and it generally has like our kind of nuts and bolts recipe. But I was thinking, Dan, we have, well, it does give some additional ideas on there, but I feel like we've got another document somewhere just talking about more options for that smoothie.
Yeah.
I might look into that and add it to our guide for today.
Yeah, it's called does your smoothie need a facelift?
Yeah.
It was a handout. Yeah, a previous coworker made it where the first page has a list of some added things you can put in. And then the other pages were a little bit less relevant to that. It was more like fun, alternative, kind of like nutrient boosting things that were not a smoothie, but were maybe, I forget, like a soup bowl, but they had like the parsley and those kind of elements to it.
Yeah.
So,
I guess that's a good thing to mention too, because I do have a couple of clients that they just aren't the biggest fan of smoothies. It's not necessarily the taste. It's just like having to sit there and drink a whole, you know, thing just isn't appealing to them. Yeah. And so, like Dan said, soups could be, like vegetable soups could be a great way to, you know, just another easy way to get multiple servings of vegetables in one sitting. So yeah, we'll definitely include that "Does your smoothie need a facelift" document in our guide for today. So again, after this call's over, first, you know, right away I'll post that question of the day, which yeah, Dan, I guess, yeah, we've covered, I think, all of the things, but do we have any you know, final pieces of advice, or does anyone here that's hanging out on Zoom or watching on Facebook, any, you know, additional pieces that you, yeah, were important to you as you know, leveled up in nutrition? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll just start doing a recap of today, and then for those of you guys who are with us right now, if there's anything you want to add in terms of things you've implemented with the strategies we've talked about, I'd love to hear some more examples. So just to kind of recap before we wrap up today, what is one thing we can do to up our nutrition and or to feel less overwhelmed as we're making dietary changes and lifestyle changes? The first one we talked about is crowding out. So just focusing on just adding more of the good stuff in. Just that alone, at worst, quote unquote worst, will increase your nutrition and therefore your health. And at best, it's going to do that and crowd out at the same time some of those less healthy things that were there before. So it's a kind of a 2-for-1 punch. And so just think about what is something that I would like to add more in to help bring more balance to my diet and for my health. Veggies, especially non-starchy veggies, can be a great starting point if you're not sure what that thing could be. Number 2 is identifying if there's certain needs, things about your diet or habits in your diet that are really important to you, that without those, it'll be a real struggle. Think what could be an alternative, or one or more alternatives that are a better choice. I could start implementing that instead. So it's still fitting that need, even though it's not quite exactly the same. And you can keep moving forward. Number 3, and lastly, was the smoothies. So the smoothies can be just a great, quick way to make something that is rich in nutrients, can be filling, and it's adaptable. You can spruce it up to be a meal on its own, or you can have it with a meal and just make it a very filling thing, especially because it's just easier to sometimes just eating a lot of vegetables or more vegetables can feel like a lot of work. Like, man, I'm just chewing so much, or I'm not used to this. But a smoothie is just easy to just drink it down. You're like, boom, you know, I just had a meal or a good part of a meal in like very little bit. It's just easier. So those are the three suggestions, kind of discussions for today. What one of those things might help you? Maybe it's something else, but just think through if you're looking for a next step, maybe consider one of those three options and moving forward with that. So anything you want to add before we wrap up for the day, Natalie?
No, I think you, recovered or covered everything beautifully. And again, our question of the day, Dan just mentioned it. So basically, again, I'm going to be posting it as soon as we end this call. So keep an eye out for that. What is one thing you can do to help level up your nutrition? What could you do to crowd out, whether that's, making a smoothie or do a slightly better alternative to enjoy something? So just, what's one thing? Boom. I
All
think,
righty.
thanks also everyone for joining and your comments, and we appreciate just your participation and presence.
Yeah, hope this is helpful for people. And again, we'll just continue tomorrow. Might be me again, I'll have to say. One of the two.
Movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody have a great
Yep.
day, and we will see you next time.
All right.